Yeah, alright, I'm back. It was about a half an hour ago when I shut the camera off and set out to set up the indicator to indicate the table in reference to the saddle. So I didn't want to mount my magnetic base on the top of the knee to indicate the table for the same reason why I was just talking about, that I didn't want to have extra error in there, because I know I have 1 to 1.5 thousandths of play in the saddle right now. So if I mount the base on the knee and indicate the table, I'm going to be looking at the play of the table plus the play of the saddle. Maybe that's what Keith had for his setup. I don't recall exactly. But anyways, what I've done is I've got my magnetic base for my indicator on the, mounted on the side of the saddle, and I'm indicating off of the side of the table right here. I'm actually on this little thin rib here because unfortunately the rod I have for this indicator isn't long enough. Actually, that's why it took me so long. I got several indicators. Almost none of them have really anything attached to them that I could use, so I kind of had to cobble together something. I ended up having this this Best Test Brown and Sharp kit, and I used a couple of the pieces from this in conjunction with this Mitutoyo indicator that I had, and was able to get that all set up. So I actually did find that I have an indicator that only indicates like 15 thousandths all the way around or something like that. That would be a really good indicator to use for, especially on the knee where the tolerance is tighter. Remember I said 1.5 thousandths on the saddle and the table. The knee is something like 0.0003 or something like that. So 0.3 of a thousandth. All right, so I've got the indicator set up, and let me reposition the camera. Hopefully that's going to show up on the camera. You can see I'm moving that table back and forth, and I'm getting, let me just pull it all the way to one side, zero it, 2.5 thousandths, so that isn't too bad. So just realized I got my whole setup here, and that's going to be, well, hopefully that won't be too much in the way of my of my getting in there and adjusting it. So on the right hand side of the table here, where you can't see me right now, I'm just making sure, I'm verifying that that locking screw is loose. Oops, and it is. So now I'm going to get in here on this side to the adjustment screw. Alright, it feels like it's tightening up a little bit, so check it there. And I'm still at 2.5 thousandths, so I can, if I push that over so it's at the 2.5 thousandths, if I can actually watch it come back when I tighten that jib. Alright, that jib is either tightening up or I'm up against the lock on the other side again. Well, that's tightening up. Oh, that's 1.5 right there. Again, not snapping back like I was hoping it would. Get on this side and make sure this is still loose. Well, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to see if this tightens on this side, and it doesn't, which means I am pushing up against the jib. So I'm going to loosen this some more. Still at that 1.5. Let's see if we can't give it just a little bit more. That still felt loose. Alright, let's see. It's at about 1,000th right there. Now, I don't have the lead screw in for the table, so I should be able to just slide the table anywhere I want it to go if it isn't too tight. So right now I'm almost all the way out. In fact, I think I am. Table lock is unlocked. It's not moving, but is that just because I'm too far? Probably. Let's see. Thinking that right there is too tight. If I had the lead screw in there, I could probably get it to crank. But I mean, I think it should be loose enough right now. I need to be able to move it, and I can't. So let me back this off a little bit. Now I'll probably have to tighten the lock now to push the jib back the other way to get it to loosen. Come on now. Alright. Still at 1,500. Still won't move. Well, guess we could put the lead screw in. Well, I managed to get the lead screw in, and not much room at all to spare. I actually got a little worried when I started looking at it, because I thought maybe I made a major miscalculation in the positioning of this boiler, this mill in reference to my boiler over there. But luckily, by moving the saddle back on the knee, I was able to just squeak by, because it's got to screw in from that end there and go in that way. But I got it in, so now I've got to put together the end plates and everything that keep it captive to the table, so that when you turn the handles, instead of the screw unscrewing, it actually moves the table. But it's almost 10 p.m. and I've got work tomorrow. I got a couple of things I got to take care of before I go to bed, so I think we're going to call it a night tonight. Alright, time to figure out how all this table hardware goes together. Let's see. I tried to group things together when I was taking them apart. I did throw some labels in some buckets and stuff, so hopefully that'll help me out. Let's see, I know that the power traverse, the power feed assembly was on the right hand side of the table, and I had that in this bucket here, that hand wheel. I think two hand wheels are identical, but we'll keep that hand wheel with the side that it came off of. And I had this little tiny bushing right here that I think I found on the ground, and at the time, so I wrote myself a note. Good thing I remembered to write a note. Orphan bushing, most likely from right hand side behind drive unit ? I think when I was looking at this, I figured that bushing probably fell out of here, and that I didn't notice it was in there when I took the unit off, and when I tipped the unit it fell out. That's how I ended up finding it. So for now we're going to have to go with that assumption. Okay, I had this assembly here on the shelf with that box, so I think that that's the right hand side one, and I think I had already determined that they're pretty much the right and left are identical. But this one I had over here on a separate shelf with this cover, that hand wheel, and this dial. So I think this is all left hand. And then as far as where is that plate, well, I had, where's that plate for the right hand side? In this bucket I have this plate. Okay, and then inside this bucket there's some hardware, and there's a note here, table right hand side. So I know this all goes to here. And then this smaller bucket, the smaller container, was inside this larger bucket, but it does have its own note, table right hand side. Okay, good. So I know that all of this stuff over here and that is for the right hand side, and then this small bucket here is marked left hand table hardware, so I know this is all left hand side. This had something in it that I already used because it's empty. And this little bucket here had a bunch of screws in it that I've already installed that had to do with the elevation assembly and the what I've put together so far. So I could put this aside. Let's see, I can get this out of here actually altogether for now. All that's left in here are those plates that I got to install with the little rivets and the little tiny caps that cover the access holes after I put the when I finished setting all of my jibs. Some of this stuff I can kind of figure out just by looking at it. Like this sleeve, for instance, goes on the end here, and it can't go any further with the Woodruff key in there. And if I take the Woodruff key out and I slide it down, then the Woodruff key wouldn't be able to go back in because the sleeve's not going to be able to go past this ridge right here. So I know that this sleeve actually goes on the very end here. And all that does actually is act as a bearing for that hand wheel to rotate on. So I'm going to want to grease this before I install this. So this is going to go on near the end. This doohickey here clearly is what keeps the bearing captive in this whole big plate assembly. This is clearly a locking nut. And I've got the special washer to lock it in place. So the only thing I'm not positive about right now is this brass bushing right here. And I know if I try this, well, that will not go past this threaded area here. So this brass bushing must sit, yeah, without a doubt, that's going to have to sit after the nut is screwed onto these threads here. So that must just sit there behind that hand wheel. Ah, interesting. Can't sit there. Must sit behind a dial. Must sit there like that. Alright, so I think I can safely assume that the first bit of business is going to be to install this bracket assembly. And I can see that I've got this too far out, so just go on this side, and I'll tell you what, that's kind of hard. That's hard to do with the weight of the thing on there, so I'm going to back this out. When the lead screw is unsupported, which probably isn't a great idea to be doing anything with it unsupported, it's hard to turn. Okay, let's see. Is that far enough yet? A couple of pins. There we go. Alright. Alrighty. Bearing looks like it might be... Okay, so I think I could put this bearing keeper on. And that's going to clearly be 3 screws, all the same length. If I look through my screws for this side and the hardware for this side, I can find that there are 3 small screws that are all the same size and much smaller and shorter than everything else. And those are not the right screws. Alright, well, I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of these bigger ones, so 3 of them, 4 of the bigger ones are for holding this on, and 3 of them are for holding this bearing keeper on. Alright, I'm going to put 2 out of the 4 screws that hold this assembly on in for right now. Just 2 because in case I decide that I've done something wrong and I gotta take this apart again. I really don't feel like having to take up 4 screws. Oh, well, obviously those 3 small screws are to hold this cover on. Okay.
So far, so good. Now that is not, I can see that's not in where it should be. So now that I've got that all bolted together, I can rotate this shaft back in, and it should be able to go right into that bearing. There we go. And once it bottoms out in the bearing, what ends up happening is if I keep turning it, now it's moving my table, which is what it's supposed to do. So now, what I need to do is I need to install, I'm just going to double check, but I'm pretty sure this collar does not go on here. Yeah, there's no way this collar is going to go on there. Okay. So that leads me to believe that we're dealing with this nut. And the nut has a bevel. The nut has a beveled side. And I can see by the marks on these slots where they were banged on by, well, probably me most recently, but more than once these have been hacked on. I can see that the beveled side actually faces in. Let me just see. This washer's supposed to go on first. If the washer goes on first, yeah, the washer must go on first, dummy. Alright, this should be a slot on shaft. Yeah. So this washer is key to the shaft. Then alright. Okay, I'm not going to tighten up that spanner nut and lock it just yet because it's kind of in a bad area there. I don't have much clearance to work on it. I'm going to move the table down the other end and do that. But before I do that, I'm going to turn my attention over to this side of the table here where I have a lot more room to work. That way the lead screw will be supported by bearings at both ends.